Muslim women have to wear the hijab, but Muslim men don't. How is that not misogynistic? Easy. Men and women are very different, but modesty in dress and character is prescribed to both genders. But men and women in Islam are not allowed to imitate each other. Hence, the way we cover up and practice modesty is specific to each gender. Misogyny doesn't belong in Islam.
Women are no longer allowed to sing, recite, or read out loud in public in Afghanistan. This is because their voices are deemed too intimate and should not be heard. So if a mother wanted to sing to her child in public to soothe them because they're crying, they're prohibited from doing that. They're also prohibited from getting an education that exceeds the 6th grade level.
Muslim women are valued and honored. Practicing and righteous men who follow the Quran and the Sunnah to a T would only treat all women with utmost respect.
Women are also required to hide their entire bodies, including their faces, to avoid temptation. Women are not allowed to look at men who aren't related to them by blood or by marriage. They are not allowed to be transported without a male guardian with them.
Thinking that women wanting to cover up has anything to do with misogyny is a very Western and close-minded way to think, especially when a woman says she loves being modest and wearing hijab.
And an Afghan woman who was just 1 year from completing her law degree had to completely forego all of her education. Some people have made the point that animals now have more rights than women in Afghanistan.
Please just accept it as fact rather than undermining her own choices and life views just because they're different from yours. Western standards are not universal, and we all deserve to live our life just the way we want to.
In Afghanistan, it has been over 1,000 days since the Taliban reinstated their rule and banned an estimated 1.2 million girls from secondary schooling. The Guardian reports that there has been a rise in forced and early marriage, domestic violence, suicide, drug addiction, and an eradication from all aspects of public life, with no end in sight. More recently, the Taliban has prohibited women from speaking or showing their faces outside their homes, because women's voices are deemed to be potential instruments of vice, and so will not be allowed to be heard in public under the new restrictions. Women must also not be heard singing or reading aloud, even from inside their homes. Meanwhile, Islam is the fastest growing religion due to higher birth rates, immigration, and globalization. And interestingly, Western converts are playing a role. A 2023 report by Cambridge found that 15.8% of 1,034 surveyed Australian Muslims self-identified in 2020 as converts, while in the United States, a 2017 Pew Research report found 1 in 5 of 1,001 surveyed Muslims were converts. As it turned out, during 2010, of the 5,200 Britons who converted to Islam, more than half are white, and 75% of them are women. In the past 10 years, some 100,000 British people have converted to Islam, of whom some 3/4 are women, according to the latest statistics. This is a significant increase on the 60,000 Britons in the previous decade, according to researchers based at Swansea University. Many Western women are converting to Islam either because they intend to marry a Muslim man or because they have experienced what they refer to as a religious calling.
That you guys continue in your community, continue converting people, because we've all been stripped of our identity. Our youth don't have any identity. That's why they're coming to your ideology, giving them something to belong to. Plus the Western women, right? The Western women are meeting these Muslim men. These Muslim men are saying to these Western women, you are so precious. You are so important. I want no one to look upon your beauty other than me and Allah, right? This is what your men are telling our Western women. So I'll be your husband, right? But you'll be in the home, you'll be breeding, right? We're gonna have babies, we're gonna worship, and you're gonna cover because you're that important. So that's what you've got there. And then you've got a lot of Western men, not all of them, but a lot of Western men that are worried about what their eyebrows look like, going on sunbeds, watching the football. So what do you think is... I'm not silly here. I can see what these women are coming to. I see what's going on here. The natural instinct for a woman is to find a man that is going to be protective.
This has led to cases of what can only be described as fangirling of Islamic figures, including terrorists, as was the case when Somali-American influencer Marian Abdi, who goes by Jinyada Mado online, visited Afghanistan in a trip she described as a dream come true, where she posed in photos with Taliban fighters. However, long term, It seems that many converts, or reverts, as Muslims believe that everyone is born on a path to Islam and therefore are reverting back rather than converting, are leaving the faith not long after. Pew Research has found that roughly the same number of people leave the faith as those who join, suggesting that conversion is not having a direct impact on the growth of Islam. Considering that Islam offers a structured opposition to women's rights that often overlaps with the right, it comes as no surprise that after a taste of what it's really like to live as a woman under the Islamic faith is enough to burst the bubble of interest. Muslim men and Western right-wing men both share a belief that the perceived decline of men's fortunes in every sphere is blamed on modern women's emasculation of their male counterparts, which they claim is the inevitable, even planned, outcome of feminism.
The Palestinians are actually part of how I became Muslim.
I've been so worried about the Palestinian people, and especially the kids who've been dying. And it says here in the Quran, do not say that those who are killed in God's cause are dead. They are alive, but you are not aware of it. They keep thanking God when everything is going wrong. And we can't even thank God when everything is going right.
Undercover in Baghdad, we expose a secret world of sexual exploitation. Widows of war forced to become halal prostitutes.
بالجنس اللي أنا فقتهم أكثر شيء مثل الحيوانات حشات.
Men of God giving religious guidance on how to abuse children. In this hidden sex trade, even children are for sale.
الواحد اللي يريد عمر 12 سنة حيكون هذا موضوع هيختلف، يعني حتكون هاي بعدها فريش، سعرها يكون غالي.
People, your religion, it's beautiful.
I was told for so long that these people were awful, and they are the exact opposite.
Men on Islam are the provider. They should provide everything for the family to the woman. You are queens in Islam.
I'm not even a Muslim yet. I just did my first salah. I literally started crying at the end.
I have never felt this loved by a group of complete strangers before.
If you listen to the plight of Muslim women around the world and that of those who have left their religion, it's easy to see that the offerings of community, identity, and financial support from a man are not enough to ignore the misogyny that is inseparable from the religion itself. The rise and fall of converts can likely be tied to a lack of reading skill or ability, as it's well known that as of 2022, 54% of adults have a literacy rate below a 6th grade level. Considering how quickly converts go from exploring the Quran to declaring themselves Muslims, it seems that many simply hadn't read far enough into the book to determine whether they agree, similarly to how more than half of Americans have read little or none of the Bible, and thus when many do read it cover to cover, find themselves losing their faith. Of course, the aesthetification of misogyny can also be seen in the West in a seemingly more secular form. Enter the trad wives.
Hannah Nealman, who you might know as the ballerina farmer, recently had an interview with The Times, and it really opened up the reality of the situation that she's in. In this interview, she goes into detail about the struggles she's faced and how she accidentally became a trad wife. It first started when she was pregnant with a child and was scheduled to do a beauty pageant just 2 weeks after her due date for her birth. This made her pregnancy extremely challenging because she was having to focus so hard on looking the best she could for her pageant. After she gave birth to her 8th child, she had some complications that included bleeding, and swelling was bedridden for an entire week. After a week, the bleeding had stopped, and she finally had the strength to get out of bed, and all of this was happening a few days before her pageant. So just a couple days after getting the strength to get out of bed, she was on a plane to Vegas with her newborn child to go compete. As the interview goes on, her husband was constantly talking over her, and Hannah was seen often looking at him during questions, and while she is answering questions being asked. Her husband openly accepted the label of being a trad family. However, Hannah spoke up and said that she didn't identify with that and did not like to have the label of a traditional woman. Hannah's dream in life was to be a ballerina, and explained how she left her home at 17 to go to New York to chase her dreams of being a ballerina, but cut her dreams short when she started to have children. In the interview, she did not mention until she was alone without her husband around. In the videos she posts on her account, you can see how much excitement fills her eyes and how she lights up the room with her smile. Her husband Daniel, however, said that he expected her to be home with the children because of how he was raised in a Mormon household with traditional family values. Early in their relationship, Daniel was pushing for marriage very quickly and claimed their relationship wasn't going to work if they didn't get married, even though Hannah didn't want to right away and wanted to wait at least a year so she could focus on herself and finishing school. However, Daniel continued to push marriage, and they were engaged after just 1 month and married just 2 months being together before they really even knew each other. After being married, she admitted to giving up dance because she said you have to give up a piece of yourself. Hannah is responsible for doing everything household related, including looking after the children, cleaning the house, making meals, and her husband refuses to have a nanny in the house and frequently becomes so exhausted from doing everything that she'd be stuck in bed for days at a time. During the entire interview, Hannah was constantly being cut off or interrupted by her husband or her kids.
Tradwife is a shortened term for a traditional wife, calling forth recollections of stay-at-home moms, except these women ensure that in addition to centering their content on submissive marriage, gender roles, and modesty, that they also cater to the male gaze with perfect hair, makeup, and appearances. These videos do not show the dirty, nitty-gritty parts of being a stay-at-home wife or mother, the lack of or results of having no income, or the boring or isolating aspects of this lifestyle. As Amanda Marcotte puts it in The Insidious Ride of Tradwives, a right-wing fantasy is rotting young men's minds. It's a neat marketing trick from tradwives to position themselves as a dangerous threat that feminists are desperate to take out. It helps sell the central, lucrative fantasy to credulous audiences, that female submission is a woman's natural desire, one that's being stolen from them by sinister feminist forces, and that you, male viewer, would be gifted with a compliant helpmeet of your very own, if not for those dastardly feminists. But these brave women of YouTube, with their picture-perfect makeup and slender but curvy physiques, will stand up to those bitches and restore your birthright. A smoking hot 22-year-old housewife who never talks back, never gets tired, never says no, and never gains weight, no matter how many children she has. By feeding conservative audiences a largely imaginary war with feminists, the tradwives are also pulling off another sleight of hand, distracting from how their content preys upon men, especially young men, by selling them a silly fantasy as reality. In the process, they're contributing to the male loneliness epidemic by discouraging young men from developing the skills and mindset they need to get a real girlfriend, instead of just subsisting on a steady stream of social media delusions. That this discussion tends to overlook is that there's a huge swath of online material about sex and relationships that presents over-the-top sexist fantasy disguised as reality. Tradwife content is some of the most pernicious. Unlike porn, which positions itself as fantasy, most of the women creating tradwife content online claim it's a window into their real lives. Even though, if you ask any real housewives, you'll find few find it necessary to put on a full face of makeup, get a professional blowout, and don a push-up bra in order to wash dishes.
Don't be fooled. This man was very intentional about the wording he chose here. On the very first slide, he says a stay-at-home wife will save you $140,000 a year. And he's speaking to men. He's reminding them that if they can get their wife to leave the workforce and stay home with children, they can save money. Because what often happens when a woman stays at home and parents children full-time is that she loses access to her financial freedom. She loses access to her career and future earning potentials. She no longer has the retirement account she would have had. She loses out financially and he gains. Men gain when they have a partner who stays at home. And so he is speaking to men. He has tried to disguise this as some empowering message to stay-at-home moms, reminding them that they're so important, and they are. Here's the thing. I support any parent who wants to stay at home with their children, but it does not come without risk. And it's very important to remember that there is value in what that person does. There's value in that work, and they should be compensated for that work. Money should be going into their retirement account. Money should be going into their bank account. They should be compensated for that work because it is incredibly valuable. But instead, he is saying, hey, dads, if you can get your wife to stay at home, you can keep that money. It's better for you financially to have a wife who stays at home. And he was strategic. He said stay-at-home wife, and then he pretends to be talking to parents on the next slide. But we all know who he's talking about. He's talking about men saving money and women staying at home and taking on that unpaid labor herself.
Taking care of a household is difficult and time-consuming. even more so when children aren't added to the mix. Having a dedicated caregiver is not morally wrong, nor is it wrong that women want to spend time with their children or stay home. The issue is that many seem to have forgotten the dangers of becoming financially dependent on another person. No matter how much you trust your husband, the dangers remain. Without a work history, credit, or property in your name, you are beholden to the demands and desires of the supporting partner and have very limited choices if you want to leave. This makes it especially difficult if you fall out of love or discover a cheating partner, but even more so if that partner turns abusive. At least with marriage and children involved, there can be some protections or monetary compensation to help cover separation costs. However, as the younger generation grows increasingly disillusioned with low-paid labor, the lack of upward mobility, and an inability to achieve the American dream, many women are opting for a more liberal version of the trad wife, as the stay-at-home girlfriend. Even as many men cannot afford to support a partner, as many seem to desire this dynamic, but cannot provide the financial support or house required. Search terms like stay-at-home girlfriend, 37.3 million views, life as a stay-at-home girlfriend, 37.8 million views, stay-at-home GF, 36.2 million views, and SAHG, 34 million views, are increasingly popular on TikTok. The fictionalized and glossy depictions of a softer life on screen hide the result of a breakup and lack of independence.
Here's what I find so tragic about these young, pretty, conservative women. You're such a gaslighted demographic because one of the pillars of this ideology that you're bought into is that some people are just inherently superior and inferior people deserve to be exploited. And sure, women are technically property, but you don't have to worry about that because you are hot property. Exceptions will be made for you. So you're more than willing to play into this needlessly cruel game because you've been assured that you'll win. And soon the young winning man of your dreams will look at you and say, yes, that is what I'm supposed to want, and acquiring her will make me look like a superior man. And on your way to your superior life together, you will become his obedient, righteous, lonely, domestic servant. Congratulations. Until one day, you get a scary mammogram. And you discover that he never signed up to be a nursemaid. And unlike you, the young 24-year-old bleach blonde at the office understands that he's the most important person in any room. And she'll have no qualms about poaching your mate because he's her ticket to a superior life. And at that moment, when the handle has snapped off of the basket that held all of your eggs, you might realize that you were flattered into giving your entire life away in service of a man who only ever saw you as a commodity, because I assure you, that is how these men see you. And being hot property won't have protected you from a life of being used up and discarded. But here's the kicker. You'll have sunk so much of your life into proving your own politics right that you won't be able to direct that rage in the appropriate direction, because that will mean admitting that you were had. So there you'll be, a middle-aged woman with a pert haircut and great Botox, standing in line at a Kroger, making the fact that your life didn't turn out as promised into an assistant manager's problem, because don't they know that exceptions are supposed to be made for you? Good luck, babe. Good luck.
Ari Liu has been documenting her experience of reinventing her life on TikTok. As she puts it on her podcast, Delusional Daydreams, I have no car, I have no job, I have no money, because to be quite honest, for the past 3.5 years, I've been a stay-at-home girlfriend. I was put in this position to stay at home, be taken care of, and really be the support system for my partner. And by doing so, I gave away everything I had. And now I am left with absolutely nothing. Many of these women resent others pointing out that they are willingly buying into the same dynamics that their grandmothers and mothers fought to free themselves from. But often, this is replied to as being unfeminist to critique. Feminism has become a watered-down term, as it's applied to anything vaguely related to women or femininity. Feminism does not mean the right to do what you want and not be judged for it simply because you're a woman or identify as one. It means women's liberation from the patriarchy. Choosing to participate in your own oppression doesn't make it not oppression.
We're committed to feminism as an ideology. We need to be thinking about our political aims, which are to facilitate the social, political, economic liberation of women. And if the thing that we're talking about does not help get us to the social, political, economic liberation of women, it's not feminism. It might be fun. It might be a great time. I do a lot of stuff that I'm like, ooh, this is problematic. But I'm not on here being like, every single thing I do is feminist, because it ain't. It's not.
At the very least, I can recognize that the fact that we're arguing about this at all is because feminism has made great strides. Caitlin Moran writes in How to Be a Woman, "These days, however, I am much calmer, since I realize that it's technically impossible for a woman to argue against feminism. Without feminism, you wouldn't be allowed to have a debate on women's place in society. You'd be too busy giving birth on the kitchen floor, biting down on a wooden spoon so as not to disturb the men's card game, before going back to quick-lining the dunny. This is why those female columnists in the Daily Mail, giving daily wail against feminism, amuse me. They paid you £1,600 for that, dear, I think, and I bet it's going in your bank account and not your husband's. The more women argue loudly against feminism, the more they both prove it exists and that they enjoy its hard-won privileges. The problem, of course, is that like with every wave of feminism, we are now weathering the pushback, made worse by the dismantling of language used to describe the female experience, and in some places, the existence of the female sex at all."
So I'm a former Mormon trad wife. I have 6 kids. I'm 38 years old. I don't have an education. I got married young. I had kids young. And I absolutely gave up on my hopes and dreams to choose the life that I have now. If you would have asked me 5 years ago if I felt like I had choices in my life, I would have hands down told you that I was incredibly happy with the choices that I made, and that I made those choices knowing full well what I was choosing. Now that I've been out of the church for 3 years, I will tell you that I was never actually given a choice, because I see that the choices that I were given were not given in an honest light. It's not fair to show someone 10 candy bars and say, hey, you can choose this candy bar, which is the right candy bar that you should choose, or you can choose these 9, which are poisonous and deadly, and if they don't kill you, they're going to kill all of your friends and family members. What would you like to choose? That's how choices are given in Mormonism. So when you're in it, you feel like you're making a choice that makes you happy. And to be fair, like, I was happy in the sphere of what I knew happiness was, which in Mormonism, sacrifice and suffering is required for happiness. You're taught that everyone else's happiness outside of the Mormon church isn't real happiness. The joy you feel being Mormon, even though it comes with pain and suffering and sacrificing the choices that you actually would have made had you been presented the entire truth, is better and more and real. So are Mormon women truly choosing their lives and being happy with their choices? I think it depends what you consider choice and what you consider happiness. But I will say that for me, leaving Mormonism was the first true choice that I ever made. I didn't know life could be this amazing.
This, dear viewers, is where we part. Oh my god, it's so hot in my house right now. I had to turn off the fan to record this because I'm trying not to overuse the AC, and it's awful. At least it's awful for talking. If I'm just sitting here and melting into the couch, it's fine, but if I have to talk into the microphone, it's a lot less fine. Anyway, I actually hired a maid recently. There's a service that, there's plenty of services here. A lot of people just are like, here's my maid, here's her phone number, go pay her. But I went through an agency, and it's $5 an hour, which, yes, very cheap. I own a studio, and for $40 a month, she comes once a week, for 2 hours, cleans and leaves. And I pay the agency and they pay her. And if I want her to do extra things, like, can you run to the market and grab this, I can give her money for it. And there's this little essay I haven't found a place to use yet that's called Why I Want a Wife. And it's because the labor of having someone else to do that stuff for you, it takes so much off your mind. Now that I don't have to worry about the consistent chores, the cyclical ones, the ones that you have to do consistently, it makes things a lot easier for me. I don't have to worry about keeping my laundry folded nice or making sure the bathroom or kitchen is clean because there's someone here who's going to come do it and get rid of all those dishes in my sink. And with the amount of time that I spend cooking, there's often a messy kitchen. I do try to clean it up, but my mom doesn't agree with my cleaning practices, and personally, it's a lot considering how often I fry things and whatnot. And so when I see these little videos of like the women dressed up all pretty and cute and cooking, when I'm not cooking in front of the camera, I am wearing at best a pair of shorts. If I'm frying, maybe I'll get a shirt, or maybe I'll add to the spattering of grease burns on my stomach. I'm not looking cute. I'm making my dinner and then I'm going to go eat it. Even when I was staying with my parents and cooking for my family, I was not dressing up and looking cute. You can look through all of my videos and see that I'm pretty much always wearing either my regular clothes or wearing pajamas. Because domestic labor isn't cute, it's not adorable, it's not for an audience. When I cook, I'm just showing you what I made for dinner. When they make these little things, they're not just presenting the food they made or the chore they're doing, they're presenting imagine if you had a helpmeet like me. And then, for one thing, a lot of guys do not know what it takes to run a house. Lord knows my little brother can't clean a pot and he's 16. So they think that it really looks like that you just look really 100% all the time while you do all the chores, and you do not. And that the house will look perfect. And a lot of these women, I would guess that a lot of these women also have nannies or some kind of cleaning service to help out, because it does a lot of labor, especially in the ones that have larger families. Anyway, a lot of these women I understand where they're coming from. I understand the TikToks where women are like, oh, I can't believe I have to work. But you have to remember, at least you can have a bank account. At least when you work, you can get paid for it. And yeah, maybe you have to do a lot of the housework, but you can just tell your boyfriend or husband to get off his lazy ass and help. It's possible. I know men can clean toilets. I've seen it happen before. Anyhow, if you guys have any comments, questions, or concerns, you can let me know in the comment section down below. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye.